So I thought it'd be fun just to talk about this design evolution that I did and how I progressed from one design to the other while trying to do basically the same thing. Try to keep the same needs and just doing little changes along the way to try to get closer to what I wanted. So starting off, these are all Magnacut. They're all approximately 63 Rockwell hardness. Their overall length is like 12 inches, and the blade on all these is around 8 inches. So I'll start off with this one, which was the first one I did in this sort of configuration. Okay, so this was the first design, and I'm gonna go over certain details that are gonna get mirrored in the next knives too, but I'm gonna explain it as I go along. So I wanted something I could chop, so I went with an 8-inch blade, and the thickness of the stock is 0.187 inches, which was the thickest I could find at the time. I wanted something that could cut easily with the tip of the blade. So I made it angled, so it's a bit banana shaped if you look at the angle of the handle in comparison to the blade. What that does is when I am holding it, it is slightly forward, so it's easier to present the tip when you are slashing at something. The handle I went with a chili pepper design. I found that this design is just very nice for doing snap cuts. So snap cuts in tandem with being able to easily cut with the tip is just a very nice combination. And the reason for this that I found is that just these two little slopes here and then here helps with just giving your hand a little bit more leverage at your pinky and your two fingers when you are doing snap cuts. It just feels like you can put more power behind it. I did do a bit of a swell here on the end just so it doesn't fly out of my hands, and I found that this is enough for the weight of this knife. And then other than that, I contoured these two curves here to my hand, so when I do hold it ice pick grip, it just fits perfectly. And then I also wanted to mess around with just G10 pins and just the design of them. So this is supposed to be blood drops. So now into the negatives that I found just by using it. I found that I ground this knife a little bit too thin. I did a full convex from spine to edge, and because of that, let me see if I can find it. It has a bit of a warp, which if I can find it. Oh, here it is. See right there. Bit of a warp, which has gone out a little bit more. I mean, it's not as prominent as before, just because I've been sharpening and stuff like that when I do use it. I use it every now and then, less now, but yeah. So that was the problem. Chopping was the problem for this knife because of the blade shape. I mean, the grind shape, and then just it wasn't as heavy as I wanted it to be too, forward heavy. Okay, so the next knife I did was this one. So this one is kind of hard to tell, but it actually has the same angle, same banana shape as the other knife, the previous knife. So if I do try to line these up from the handle, if I do line them up handle-wise, right there, it is basically the same thing. This one's actually a little bit higher, the one in the back, but it still does the same thing. It still has the tip slightly forward, slightly downward when I do hold it like this, and it's still very easy to cut with the tip of the knife. So that's the same. The handle is basically the same. It's a chili pepper design. I had to do the swell a little bit wider just because I have more weight of on the knife. I don't want it flying out of my hands. And what I did to solve the problem of the previous knife was I made the blade itself wider. So wider blade, more weight, I can chop with it better, but also the edge isn't as fragile too, because what I did was instead of having a full convex grind all the way to the end to basically to ground basically to zero, I still have a high grind on this, but I went to a convex right at the end. So I hand ground the end, this little shiny part you see here, by hand, and just convexed it. So different edge, and with more weight. So I was able to just chop way better with this knife without it causing any damage to the blade itself. The problem I ran into was when I do use this as ice pick grip, or when I do poke anything, my hand being right up against the edges of the metal itself does cause some discomfort. Also, when I have it here in ice pick grip and I poke something like hard, same thing, it does cause some discomfort even if I have my hand right up against the edges. So that was the only problem in this knife, which I try to solve in the next one. Oh, and for this design, I decided to do an eye. So on this side, it's forward facing eye. It's a weird eye. And for this side, it's facing the tip. So yeah. Okay, so this is the last iteration, and I was able to find 0.211 thickness Magnacut. So that's what I use for this one, and it does make a big difference in comparison to 0.187, and it just feels more like a little hatchet. I mean, I coupled that, so more thickness, along with just a not so a shorter grind, so the grind isn't as high as the previous one. If you see how high this one went in comparison to this one, it stops right here. It makes this knife just chop way better than the previous one. Another thing I did was I kept the same method of bringing it down to an apex, because I knew that worked. I didn't have any problems at all with the other previous knife and any warpage and stuff like that on the edge, so I did the same thing to this one. I had it heat treated, and then when I got it back, I just hand ground the end to an apex by hand, but I made a convex of it, so hand ground to a convex at the very end. One of the changes that I did that has nothing to do with the points I was doing, the details I was pointing out, is I did this into a complete curve rather than this, which is, I don't know if you can see the difference. So this is a bit of a curve, and there's somewhat of a belly there. So it goes curvature, a little bit of a belly, and then it continues. This has a constant curvature. Well, it's kind of straight here, but from here on out, there is no belly. It's just a piece of a circle, basically. The reason I did that is if you have a circle, there's less when you hit something, when you impact something. There's less area that you're hitting it with, so it's supposed to chop better. I don't know if that actually works, but I like the idea of it. I also went with a tip that's less wide. It's still reinforced to a certain point, so it's not too thin, but it's less wide than the previous one, so it should be able to penetrate better. I haven't compared them to each other, but this does penetrate very well. And so I enhanced some things that weren't really a problem for the other one. The other one, this one could still chop and stuff, but I made this into a better chopper. And then the way I dealt with the problem of just having discomfort with my hand just going up against the edges of the metal is I continued the handle all the way to the top here. And what that does is, it doesn't matter how I hold it, so sword grip or ice pick grip, I have this little platform that keeps my hand from just chafing or going up against the edge. And then even when I do slam this knife into things, it distributes the force a little bit more when it does go into my hand. So yeah, just a lot better for that. I did change the handle from chili pepper design to, I would call this, I guess, a seahorse design. And the reason for that is you do have, like I said, this feels like a little hatchet. You do have a lot more weight, and I just want to have just to keep my hand in place. And I did do more of a swell even than before on the end of this knife, and I kept that even though I don't really need it too much because of this curvature. my hand is basically just like stopped there. But what I found is that when I do snap cuts with this knife, I like to just do them this way, and it just has a little crevice for my finger, my pinky, that just works out like beautifully. So overall, I'm like super happy with this design. I did change the design of the G10 pin to an evil eye. So here's one side of it, and it's still looking at the tip of the knife on this side, even though it's a little wonky. So yeah, overall, I like this design. I think I covered all the problems, and I enhanced some of the pluses too. Nothing's perfect, but as of now, maybe later I'll be able to improve even this one. But as of now, I think this is as good as it gets for something I can do. So yeah, but yeah, and if you have any suggestions, if you any suggestions to improve this, that'd be like super nice. But any suggestions or questions, let me know. Okay.